semana kotuk nene, na semana kotuk ke segunda ita hustura konaba difference quotient la sala difference quotient nene se mile hene kari ni dian saida basically difference quotient is you're finding this the slope of a second line as you reduce the age of that. Okay, now in order to continue to lesson number 4, yeah. So today is lesson number 4. Lesson number 4. Okay, so lesson number 4 is about that. So lesson 4, we are going to start talking about derivative. Okay, so in order to understand what the derivative is, and I know we have talked about this previously, but let me just go and talk to you guys again about such things, and then we can go from there. All right. So let's go back to this. Let's go back to talking about all right. So imagine you have a graph like this. Okay. So you have a functions like that. This is a function, yeah. So this is your function over here. It's very big. All right. So imagine ito nene yung function naman eh. This is your okay. Ito na yung function na maka ito na eh. So this is your f of x, yeah. So this is your function f of x. Well, in this case, this f of x is represented by I don't know. Let's see. What formula did I use? So f of x is equal to x cubed 2x squared plus 1. So this is your f of x, right? So this is your f of x. F of x is equal to x cubed plus 2x squared plus 1. Okay, and this is remember last time we talked about the slope of the line, the slope of this, when a line touches just one point on the function, that is what you call the slope, right? But what is the formula for finding the slope? What is the formula for finding slope? Slope is equal to, slope m is equal to what? Slope m is equal
Delta
to
y all over delta x.
delta y over
Delta y
delta
over
x,
delta
which
x.
is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, right? x2 minus x1. x2 minus, oops. x2 minus x1, yeah? Okay. So in this point, all we have is x1 and y1. Do we have y2 and x2 and y2? We don't, right? Agora ini ita la ira. Los kala.
Yes,
And let's
teacher, we don't have it.
call this point to be a and f of a. Okay, let's call this point a and f of a. All right, so let's call this point a and f of a. Okay. So this is the point of A and f of A. So if you will put this is the x-axis, so this is your. So for example, if you were to think about this, your A is here, right? So if you were to think about this, on your A ni hene, no, so this is your A. Maybe whatever you get is the f of A over here. Okay, so that particular point is A and f of A. But we need another point, right? So in order to do this, you need to put, in order to find the slope for this thing, you need to put another point, right? Ito tem que aumenta ang ponto ida of that function. Okay, and the way we do that is, let's think, let's take another point. All right, let's make another point over here. Okay, so let's suppose this is another point over here, and then you have this over there. So okay, a plus h. So technically, the one that is, so before you go into that, okay. So if I were to put, so how a karak amenta ta may uing hene how to hene kan how ni ane may hene lo sala how ni ane may hene. This is my A. Losto? And then if I want to prove another one over here, right? If I want to put this over here, then that means A plus H. That means the distance between this to this is what you call the H, which is this one, right? So which is this one. That's the distance. Okay? And therefore, niya function ibahira o input on f of A sama ihane o niya area da be idanene niya saifali f of A plus H, correct? Ne, to hindi mi comprende kale. To hindi mi comprende kale.
Yes, teacher.
You
Yes,
understand,
teacher.
yeah? Up to this, because I really, really want you to understand this simple this concept. So essentially, ito ni objektivo initial ni masayda. Ita hakarak atubuka, ita ni niya slope, bahira niya ponto ida red ne. Ito ni objektivo na tubuka ito ni slope ida ne. Los kala? Ito ni objektivo na tubuka ito ni slope ida ne. May be, ato heta ito ni slope ida ne, ita usa langsung ida ne, ita meniya ponto ida de. Ita labele buka slope ida ne, los kala? Tamer na may itamenta tam ponto ida. Itamenta tam ponto ida na ba? Bahira itamenta tam ponto ida. Anto ponto ida ne, sai fali ita niya the point where you have A plus H and then f of A plus H. This is where your region is. Okay, comprende to? And this is where that's where this one comes in. So this is where your this one comes in. Okay, so you have A plus H and then f of H plus A. That's the point over here, over there, up there. Okay. So therefore, the length of this is H. Lo salah niya clara entre sa na maka niya H naman eh. So let me just remove this everything here so that you understand. Okay, so this point over here, niya ponto ida maka this is your A and f of A, and this is your A plus H, and then f of A plus H. All right. Now look at the hare ba iha niya H ne. Bang hira how mura ida ne tungmay. Okay, so bang hira how mura ida ne tungmay. Bang hira how mura tu how niya be ponto ida ne may. Dozalay. Look how akara kimi nota be niya H ida ne niya naro. Okay, look at this. Look at this H. I want you to notice this. Okay, what happened if we bring it down? Iminota ka lang. Ni H na side. Ni H na side.
So it's become smaller.
Getting smaller and smaller, right? And then what happened when your H gets to 0? That's the original slope that we want to find. Lost up? That's the original slope that we want to find. It's the same principle. Initially, you started here, and then you have an H, right? But then How do you find, now that you know 2 points, now that you have 2 points, agora imihan na pon turua, how do you find the slope of these 2 points? Let's call this f prime of x. Let's call this f, the slope of this 2 point. What is that? How do you find the slope of this 2 points? Huh? How do you find the slope? What is so y2 minus y1 over x2 minus
X2
x1
minus X1.
between these 2 points, okay? Now, what is your y2 here? Let's suppose this is your point 1, this is point 2. What is your y2? Huh? Yun yung y2 masara?
F of A plus H.
Yes, f of a plus 8. This is your y2. Uh-huh. Wait, what is this? I must draw that. Okay, so you want to find the slope. Okay, you want to find the slope. So your y2 is f of a plus h. Right? What about your y1? Yung y1 na masara?
F of A.
Minus f of a. You divided that by, what is your x2?
A plus H.
A plus h. What is your minus x1? What is your x1?
A.
It's simply a. Okay. So let's call this slope still m, yeah? For now, let's just call it a slope now. Let's call this m for now. So let's simplify f of a plus h minus f of a divided by, so a, so at the denominator a plus h, that's, you can simplify it by a plus h minus a. So what happened here? The a will cancel out, Losala. A minus a is 0, correct? This cancels out. All you left with is what? Is simply h.
H.
But remember, this one is the slope for what? This one is the slope for what? Ida na slope by the linya blue na to this line. Oh my God, what is it? This one is the slope for this blue line. Losala. This formula is the slope for this blue line. But that's not what we want. We want is the slope for this line over here that we want earlier. Losala. This is the slope that we want. This is what we want. But what happens? So how do you find the slope that we want? So the way you do that is by reducing the h. H is getting smaller and smaller. Right? Okay, so when you talk about something that is getting smaller and smaller, what principle do you use? Huh? Remember, yeah? When you want to find something that is getting smaller and smaller, principle na bita aprende sa mana kotong na sara. You want your h to get smaller, right? Then your h na get smaller. So you can write as, you can take the limit of it. What's it like? Remember, you want to take the limit because limit naman as you get smaller and smaller. When your h, you want your h to be smaller and approximately to 0. You're approximated and approximating it to 0. So the way you do that is by doing this. That's why you do the limit, you put the letter limit in there because you will be approximating this and then getting here. This is the actual slope that you want. This is the slope that you want, okay? So let me just draw a line over here so we can see. Okay, so this is the actual slope that you actually want. Oops. Okay, so this is the actual slope that you actually want. Okay, but the one that is initially you define was this one. Okay, you want the slope of this. So salah imi hakarak imi niya slope ni mi at buka slope ay dane ni niya. Maybe imi hahuhusi the bukolok fanting dane, but when you take the limit of that, when you take a limit and reduces the age of h, then you will get the slope of the one at the bottom. Toine comprende kala? You understand what I'm saying, correct?
Yes, teacher.
Yes, teacher.
Okay, so that's the slope of that. That's why you take the limit of that. So basically, so this is what derivative is. This is the definition of derivative. Okay, so the derivative is basically finding the slope of a tangent line. That's what derivative is technically. So basically, derivative. So if you were to make this smaller and smaller, this will go down, 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 down. This gets to 0, and that's where you get your. That's where. So you bring it down, 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 down like this, right? And when it gets to 0, approaches 0, that's where your limits lie. Okay, that's where your limits is. That's a derivative. So now, instead of representing the slope, you can also rewrite the slope in the forms of derivative, because we just use this. We use this. We can rewrite this as a derivative is just simply f prime. And the symbol for this is f prime of x, because we are taking the derivative for this function f of x. Over here, let's just write it. Slope of this is simply f prime of x. So this is the f of a plus h minus f of a divided by h. Oh, sorry. Okay, you divided that by h, and then you have a limit of, okay, and then you have a h, and then you have h approaches 0, and this is over h. So this is technically the definition of a derivative. Okay, so this is the definition of derivative. Follow? Imitwira na to?
Yes, teacher.
Okay. So you started from here. All right. So now that this is the animation already, let's just delete everything. We'll write it in the we'll write this at the at our notes, yeah. At our notes. Okay. All right. So now that you understand this, this is how you this is the definition of a derivative. Okay. This is how you define derivative. Okay, so the today's topic number 1 that we are going to be focusing on is 1, definition of derivative, right? Definition of derivative. Okay, now that you understand this very important definition in a simulation, I just run it to you. So basically, this is your function f of x. This is your function f of x, right? And you want to find the slope of that. Also, you want to find the slope of this. You want to find the slope of this blue line over here. The slope of this is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. But the slope is simply equals to f of a plus h minus f of a divided that by a plus h minus a. Therefore, you cancel out the a minus a. You left with f of a plus h minus f of a. You divided that by h. But then you want to bring this closer, therefore you take the limit of this. You take the limit when you make h approaches 0. This is the definition of, this is the slope of the tangent line. This is the slope of the tangent line. So let me just bring it back. This is the definition of the tangent line. Bring it back. Okay. So when your h is equals to 0, right? So your h is equals to 0. Okay. Now that is the definition of a tangent line. Okay. So you can, if you see here, now this is the definition of that. This is the slope of this, this is the slope of this. Slope of this chocolate line over here. Okay, this is the slope for this chocolate line. Okay, this is the slope for this slope of this line of tangent. Well, let's call this f of x instead. Let's call this f prime of x. Let's call this f prime of x. Let's call the slope of this f prime of x. Okay, this is the slope for that one. But when you take the limit, of the m, you get this. So this is the definition of, derivative. This is what derivatives means. Okay? This is the definition of derivatives. Now let's do some examples to show this. To show how we can, so okay, remember this formula, yeah? Definition of this formula. Remember, so let's do some examples. What? Okay, so let's do some examples or sample problem. All right, so for example, you have a function. Let's say you have a function f of x, or let's call it y, yeah? Agora vou intercolicolibolo ito na y ba, né, para ver. Not simple do que how f of x, not a clue, but it's the same thing. Okay, you can write as f of x equals to y or equals to something. But or sida ako nakakerek by interchanging f of x or y, how kerek ni imi comprende dito na ya. Y is equal to f of x. Comprende to? Rona galay. Rona galay.
Yes, teacher.
Hakuli mi rona galay.
Rona, Rona.
Yes,
What did I
teacher.
say? What did I say? We hakuli sira.
Uh,
What did I say?
definition of derivative. Only formula, teacher.
No. The last one I said is what? I will be using interchangeably the symbol f of x and y. So when I use the y, ni mi comprende ito na ya. Symbol f of x o y ni daruma uja troca ba troca minded. Nebe mahira uja f of x niya mo sama dengan y. Sa ukara uja fali y mo, y ni sama dengan f of x. Comprende ya? Nebe ursit ba mo lebe confusão. Okay?
Okay, understood, teacher.
Okay. Now, so you want to find the derivative. Let's find this using the definition of the derivative. Or so the notation for the derivative here, notation for derivative. Sometimes we can write derivative as like this. Sometimes we write this as f prime of x. Okay, so if the function is representing as f of x, you're finding that the derivative symbol is this is the function symbol. So if you have a function symbol that you use is f of x, then usually derivative symbol people write is as f prime of x. Okay? So panghira maka ninya function symbol maka makakere ka na sa ne, makakere y date, anto ninya derivative symbol niya siyempre, biasa kere dito sa dy over dx. It's the same thing. Yeah, or they can just simply y prime. Or y prime. Comprende to? Ni simbolo na bita uja naman eh. Or dalaruma mo, ihalete na ba ni? Ema se hakerek fali, nasa chirakara kalau ni moris complicado, se daruma hakerek derivative of f prime of x with respect to dx. Sometimes dalaruma hakerek kan sana. But mostly dalaruma imi se hakerek simbolo ga derivative ni, dalaruma imi se ita se uja barak liu mas simbolo na ne. Yeah, ida ne or dalaruma f prime of x. Okay? Or f of f prime of x. But for now, ito na exemplo primero nito, usa lang simbolo f prime of x lang. Okay, depois ito ba, nene, depois may ito usa. Okay, so dy over dx, or dalaruma sila hakerek date, y prime ano sana eh. Or y prime. Okay, nene simbolo naman eh. Nebe, ita atu usa, buka find the derivative. Find the derivative using the definition. Agora usually by mi definição ba derivative na sa na? F prime of
Finding
x equal to the limit of h approaches 0. You have f of a plus h minus f of
minus
a
f of a
Over H.
over h. Okay, so this is the over h. This is the definition. Now, ita niya be, ihanene ita niya a ne bele troca x ga bele troca y mus labot tide ya. Nebe ihan tambah ne ita niya independent variable ni ita usa x so to hene. Ita ni ita usa x. Tambah ni ita troca te valida a ni ita troca te valida x. It doesn't matter. It's just an input and output. You remember our function for symbol? So instead of using, we put x plus h minus f of x. It's the same thing. Okay? That's the same formula, yeah? Ito na formula, ito la mura de. Ito mura de, ito na variable. Tapos kala? Ito na mi comprende. Ito la confusão nito.
Yeah.
¿Qué preguntas, Roma? Sebelum kita continue. Now, do you know what is our f of x? Ito na f of x, ini ita tenet yan. Ano, so this is ita tenet. May yun be? Ita tenet, may yun na eh. Ita tinggal hatama de. Mabi ita nabe ita lahat tenet masaya. Ita nabe ita lahat tenet maka? Ita na ita lahat tenet da. We don't know this. F of x plus 8. Mabi ita bele buka. Ita tenet katak ita ni f of x is equal to x squared minus 4x plus 5. Então ita ni f of x plus 8 niya sada. imi tinggal trocaret x plus h square. Nabe tinggal hatama date every x value nene, every x plus h value nene. Ida nene imi tinggal troca fila fale ba x ninya fatin date. Troca fale ba x ninya fatin. Minus 4 of x plus h plus 5. So when you do that, you expand it. This become x squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus 4x minus 4h plus 5. Can we simplify? Se la bella simplifica 4x, yeah, simplifica la bella, that's it. Okay, now that you already know this, agora imini f of h imi hatena na lo salai. Now you know, ruan imi hatena tena. Então, imi tinggal hatama dit fali imini niya definição né tu iminia be saída me meta né imi tinggal hatama fir fali pat imini formula dit. Therefore, your f prime of x is simply equal to the limit as h approaches 0. What is it in f x plus h? F of x plus h, naman sila. Fx squared plus 2xh plus
Plus
h
h squared.
squared minus 4x minus 4h plus 5. Salah. Minus, what is it in f of x? Ito in f of x ada. X squared minus 4x plus 5. And you divide everything by h. Toh na comprende to?
Yes, teacher.
Toh na comprende, yeah? All right. Don't worry. Later on in the derivative, you have properties that you don't have to write this. Make your life will be easier. Okay, so limit as h approaches 0. So we can just write everything out. So x squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus 4x minus 4h plus 5. So negative x squared plus 4x minus 5. So negative, distributive balance negative, negative cycle positive. Ano na? Ito na komponente divided by h. Okay, so x squared minus x squared, you take it out. What else? Minus 4x plus 4x, you take it out. Plus 5 minus 5, that's take it out. What else do we have left? Say the tummy tehela.
2xh plus h squared.
2x
Okay, so that's all we left. There's nothing else to cancel, right? So remember, this
and
is
minus
f prime of
4h.
x, yeah? Huh?
I forgot that there's 4h there, teacher.
Yeah, so 2xh plus h squared minus 4h. That's correct? Divided by
H.
h. Is this correct? That's correct.
Yes, teacher.
Okay, now we can continue. F prime of x, which is equals to limit of h approaches 0. You can factor out because you have h in every term of the polynomial. Right? You have h in every term, so you just have to factor out. So h, that's 2x plus h minus 4. Lost ka lang? Tiene comprende to?
Yes, teacher.
Divided by h. So that will get you, so your h will be cancelled out. So all you left with is limit of 2x plus h minus 4 at h approaches 0. There is no more h in the denominator, but you have a limit approaches 0. So the limit of 2x, when you substitute 0 to this becomes 2x plus 0 minus 4. So your f prime of x, is simply 2x minus 4.
Minus 4.
So, comprende to?
Yes, teacher.
And this is your answer. This is just the slope. But later on, now I want you to compare between f of x and f prime of x. We started with this function, yeah. Itahuti o function yun eh. Okay, imni f of x na manay tiya. Itahu na manay. Mahirap ibuka niya derivative. Imiharap to, imi compare to f of x o f prime of x ni beda ni be. Let's make this just f prime of x ito. Imi nota kala. Berarti ihanene one dua ida nene ni mudah te mai krai dei. Dua x ida nene ni mudah te mai krai. Derivative of negative 4x ni tauret 4, 5 ni 0 lakon tia, 5 ni lakon tia. Ito? So that's one of the
Yes.
property of a derivative. That's people ida name bol narambe, sayda? That's one property of a derivative. People call that power rule, yeah? So this is basically a power rule formula. So you just derive the first rule, okay? Power rule. Okay, so sorry, wait. Basically, this is just simply a power rule. Power rule. Where you have, if you have a function y, to find the derivative of that function, you just simply take derivative with respect to x and then x of raised to some n. You just bring down the n, x of n minus 1. That's one of the rule. Later on, you have a bunch of rule that will make your life easier. But as of now, let's just solve in derivative using the formula for now, because I want you to understand what is derivatives. So again, my question, what is derivative again? Derivative is simply finding the what? The slope of
The slope of a tangent.
a tangent line. That's simply derivative. Okay, but because the slope of tangent line, you are only using 1 point, right? That's only 1 point when you find the slope of a tangent line. That's why you add another point over here, but then you take a limit of that another point and you bring it smaller, smaller, smaller. That's derivative in a nutshell. That's derivative. And this is very, very useful later on when we look at the application of derivative. You will see that this simple principle, I mean not simple, but now that you understand it, it's simple, right? Mas galay. Agora mi comprende na sa idang derivative ni imihareda ni concept ni not very difficult, but it takes hundreds of years or before Isaac Newton came up with this idea. And this is very powerful. So I think if you heard of it, okay, derivative is powerful because calculus is basically, derivative is basically the mathematics of change, yeah. So just a side note, yeah. Before I give you another example, I want you to give a side note, yeah. Okay, derivative is simply the mathematics of change. Okay. Okay, derivative is simply the mathematics of change. So anything that is changing, you can describe it using calculus, derivative or calculus, yeah. So the mathematics of change means anything that is changing. Okay, but mahirap kuliah mathematics of change, that means anything that change, that change, what's wrong with my pen? Okay, so anything that change can be anything that change, oops, same problem. Or something's wrong with my pen for some reason. Hold on. Change can be described using derivative. Okay, so what do we mean by that? What everyday life do you see that is changing? Sa buat sa dami imni mo lolong imiharene imudansa. Ha? Say matene. What say the maka ihe minimuris lo
The
noro
weather?
ni miharene is changing. What? Give me an example. Almost anything in life that you see is changing, right? When I say changing, meaning
Time.
one variable changes with respect to others. For example, a person walking is also changing because what is changing when a person walking?
Place, distance,
Position, right?
position.
Right? When a person is walking, then the position has changed. That's a lie. What else? The number of population in a country, that is changing, right? For example, this is a country, right? For example, like this. Actually, so for example, your goal is this is Timor-Leste, and your goal is to define. You want to model the change of Timor-Leste population over the year, the change of TL population over the years, change of Timor-Leste population over time. Okay. Now you have to find, okay, what factors affecting the number of population? Okay, you need to have, people, how many number of the birth rate, how many birth is given, how many mothers give births per day or per year? What's the birth rate? For example, you can say that, in a year, in a month or in a day, a mother's birth, so they call it birth rate. Birth rate means birth rate is simply meaning how many births are happening in a specified given amount of time. Or you can say that, you can say 20 births per month, or you can say that. Or if you put it in a day, you can say, maybe 5 births in a day. That's the rate. Okay, and also you have to calculate the death rate, everything, because this is also changing, right? So number of births changes with amount of days. The more, so that's what changes mean. That's what anything that's changing, right? So if you were to model the number of population changes over time, right? If you know the rate, how fast or how slow something is changing, for example, you say, then you can predict what will happen, what the changes that will occur in the future, let's say 10, 20 years from now. If you know the rate, how fast or how slow something is changing presently or in the past, that's why you need to collect data. That's usually that's why being a mathematician is very useful for statistics, for analyzing patterns, pattern recognitions, time series analysis, and such. Is very important. Is because, like, if you apply to in an architectural context, when sama yung bela aplika derivative niya konteksto arkitektura, what is changing in architecture? Like, for example, for a building or whatever. Give me an example where there is changing occurring in the context of architecture or in economics. Kaya masir sa same architecture eh.
When we open
When what? When?
When buildings have a new number of rooms.
When buildings have
New rooms.
not technically. Yeah, building have new
when
numbers of rooms, correct. But think of
we
something that is changing always, like very fast, like in a second, in a minute, in an hour, in architecture.
when
What?
we open when we open or close our window and door,
Open and close our what?
doors and windows.
Doors and windows. What is the rate here? What is the dependent variable? When you talk about a rate or you change about changing, it has to be something that is causing the change. Okay. So when you talk about changing, right? So it has to be you have a dependent and then you have independent. Okay, you need to have an independent variable, the thing that causes independent variable and dependent variable. That's what we mean. The independent variable causes the dependent variable to change. Usually we represent dependent variable by y, independent variable by x, or sometimes time, and etc. Okay? So for example, what? In architecture, one thing that I can think of the top of my head is this. Structural integrity. Do you know what it means? Mi comprende sa structural integrity kala?
No, teacher.
Structural integrity ni basically agor uma ida ni halo husi sa ida. Like building ni niya be nene halo husi batako simenti sila to. Los kala?
Yes, teacher.
Agora iha batako ho simenti sila na bane ne material ida nini integrity ni iha. Bahira o masa ida bahira o kaur foi ma kaur fofong ni niya tos los. Mabe bahira o habaidet iha loromanas ma liu fulan rua fulan tolu to tina. Sa ini ma acontece ba masa ne. Termini ano batako ni si sasara. Aumenta udang, aumenta loromanas, pokoknya it will become brittle. Ini be comienza be rahong-rahong ni comienza hahuona, los galay.
And also it be moldy.
Yes, but you get the point. That's what structural integrity means. Meaning the tensile, the strength that the ability of the things that holds is getting smaller and smaller and over time. That's what structural integrity means. Comprende to?
Yes, teacher, comprehend.
Comprende? So for example, on structural integrity, it represents a symbol Y. So this is your dependent variable. And then, what is causes the structural integrity? Sir? You can say maybe time, ne causa in years. What else? Temperature. Environmental temperature. Or humidity. Ne causa ito kala. Ne causa ito kala. Temperature in degrees Celsius. What else? Saya may balik causa tan. Belemos ninyo wind speed
Yes.
or direction. Losto? Saya tan. Materials property, raw materials property. Raw materials property niya ka bahay na mi usa to halo niya kwalidad ito na be.
Like woods.
Yeah, but this is all independent variable, right? These are all what you call an independent variable. This is what you call independent variable because this is the one that is causing your structural integrity to go down. Comprende ito? So for example, if I were to model this as a function, right? So let's call this SI, let's call this a Y or something, Y, and let's call this X1, X2, X3, X4. Then you can model it, right? You can describe it like, okay, my Y is dependent of my X1 plus my X2 plus my X3 plus my X4. And I also have a coefficient, let's say A, B, C over here, and D. Or maybe my X1 is not just linear, but square. Like this, I don't know. Like this. That's a function. But hindi mo describe as na kanyan. Oh, X1 and X2 and X3 are my independent variable. And then my Y is my dependent variable. Does that like? Now you can use calculus. So in order to find the rate of change of something, so you can take the dy over dx of something. But ina nene pa ingin imini x ne x1 x2 x3 ne bana ni imini independent variable para close na to ni osidi min dafali calculus ide molnara multi variable calculus only vector calculus ona. But that's much more complicated. But right now ne imi hatenere katak one independent variable, one dependent variable. If you have y is equals to x squared, then you can find the dy over dx, which you have 2x. That you can find. Let's say. So this is the application of calculus, pretty much in architecture. So mathematics of change, yeah. Bahirita kuliah the mathematics of change, nene. So I want to answer, I think Chelsea asking, how do you use limits in real life? Well, technically, yeah, this is how you use limits in real life, because in order to define a derivative of something, you need the concept of limits to use it. But the actual mathematics that you use is derivative. But in order to define derivative, you need to understand the concept of limits. Comprende ito? That's how you use it. Comprende ka la? ¿Hay preguntas, Ruma?
Understood, teacher.
Okay, what about, give me an example. Same SEB, economics students. Who are economics here?
Yes, teacher, ayun.
Zé da Costa. Okay, Zé da Costa. Falta que exemplo naman yung economia na be changing. Yeah, okay? What are the things that's changing in economics and business or social science? What? Inflation? You me comprende sa inflation? Okay, one example is what? Inflation. Inflation is changing, or you can say there's a bunch of other stuff. For example, inflation. You can say, you can talk about marginal cost. Marginal cost. Okay. You can talk about supply and demand, equilibrium. All of this can be described by calculus. Okay, all of this can be explained by calculus. Okay, so this is that's the side note. Yeah, so that's it. The side note is this. Let's go back to doing examples for this derivative. All right. All right, so let's do another function. Now that you already have that, let's do another function. Suppose you have a function, example number 2. Yeah, let's say you have a function, or let's call it this y is equal to 1 over square root of 2x. Okay, let's find the derivative of this, or dy over dx is simply the limit of f of x, or limit of f of x, or x of f of x plus y, x plus h minus f of x divided by h, and then your h is approaches to 0. Oh, this is, okay, by the way, this is equal to f of x, yeah? Y is equal to f of x. We have fully la procedure repeat fil all right? So now your f of x, you know. F of x, is equal to 1 over square root of 2x. What about f of x plus h? Imihatene ka lang. Klaro to? Berarti you just have to replace the x with x2 of x plus h. That's it. And then you will get the 1 over square root of 2x plus 2h. This is your f of x plus h. Basta? Now, all you need to do is just substitute everything. F of x, substitute up. You put the f of x over here. And then you put f of x over here. Basta? Ito na imitaw mo henem. Ito na imitaw mo ihane. Okay, now you just have to do this like a, so they take the limit as h approaches 0. F of x plus h is 1 over square root of 2x plus 2h minus f of x is simply 1 over square root of 2x. You divide that by h. Tapos ka lang.
Yes, teacher.
Hey, now limit of h approaches 0. Now let's make the take the common. What is the common denominator of this? So that will be, common denominator of that is simply square root of 2x plus 2h, and then times square root of 2x. Okay, when denominator divided that, this cancels, so you only have square root of 2x. And this cancels out the negative square root of 2x plus 2h. And you divide everything by h. Okay? So now that you have that, Okay, so now you can, the one at the bottom, and I can by here the square root of x is equal to 1 over 2. That's what how you represent things. So that means you can rewrite that the one at the top is 2x minus the square root of 2x plus 2h, and the one at the bottom is 2x plus, nope, like that only. Nasa na langsung los dito na. Okay, let's just substitute the h directly. Tama h0 na, tama balarang mo to. Square root of 2x nun yung h lang yan. Namin niya na fatin date. Yan na 2x plus 2 times 0. Because your h is 0. And then you divide that by the square root of 2x plus 2 times 0 multiply by 2x. You divide that by something. Okay, so how do I factor out the h? I want to cancel out the h. This example is much more complicated than I had thought, yeah. Oh no, Haujak Fali square root niyan, sa? It didn't square root like I'm sorry. I write it Fali. It has to be just 2x, not square root of 2x, yeah. Wrong number. Okay, hold on. Let me just think this example I make myself much harder than, why do I have to make my life much harder? Okay, so f of x is simply 1 over 2x. Therefore, only f of x plus h is simply 2 over x plus h, which is simply 1 over 2x plus 2h. Tayo na, may comprende ito? Now, you just have to input this back. F of x plus h is simply 1 over 2x plus 2h minus 1 over 2x divided that by h. Then if you take the common denominator of that, which is 2x plus 2h, or kali silang, you have 2x at the top minus 2x plus 2h over here, right? Then that means, okay, so this is what you have. And then you can have limit of h approaches 0, and this one becomes, oh, everything divided by h, I forgot. And then you have 2x minus 2x minus 2h divided by 2x, 2x plus 2h, and everything is divided by h. You continue here, you take the limit of h approaches 0. So this one, 2x minus 2x is cancels out. So all you left with is negative 2h. You get negative 2h over, you get 2x and then 2x plus 2h. And then you cancel out this h and h, divided this by h. Those are or, and then you can replace negative, so limit of negative h as h approaches 0. So negative h over x, 2x plus 2h, you can reciprocate this, becomes 1 over h. That's right. When you do that, this cancels out. You're left with, so f prime of x, or y, dy over dx, is simply what? The limit of negative 1 over x dx plus 2h as h approaches to 0. And then if you to replace the h with the 0, negative 1 over x 2x plus 2 times 0, then you have negative 1 over 2x squared. This is your dy over dx. Okay, so I know this is idan ene ana sa derivative na mi calcula rarak na ni mi usan ini definition na ni calculation na naroklos na ya. But later on when you use a much simpler problem, I think it's the calculation becomes much easier. Okay, so this is the definition of derivative. Any questions? Perguntas rumah?
No, teacher.
Okay, now that you understand the definition of derivative, let's work on the formula for derivative, okay? Let's work on the differentiation formulas, yeah? Instead of using instead of using the definition, the limit and stuff, ita usa langsung det formula na bita iha ito na. Tamba, ema sir ni, ema matenek sir ni, istura hotel na be. Halo ita estudiante ni niya be, moris gampang los. Nebe ita tinggal usa dito na. Okay? Okay, formula primero na maka, ema bolu nara, one is derivative of a constant. Of a constant, okay? Derivative of a constant meaning, for example, the derivative of a constant function is 0, okay? The derivative of a constant function is 0. The derivative, yeah. Uy, pabutin tam ser masalah, zero masalah. The derivative of a constant function is 0. Maybe, por exemplo, nessa né? If my constant, how represent a constant, like that's a constant, yeah. For example, in a function and in a variable, like it's just simply a constant. This is a constant, yeah. This is simply a constant. And tayo yung derivative ba be, yung y is just simply a constant. Berarti yung derivative ba constant ne, maka is simply, tabi yung variable ida laya, yung x ida laya. So therefore, derivative of that constant, derivative of y, where y is just simply equals to constant, is simply 0. This is one property, yeah. This is derivative, the property one, ida man eh. Okay, setiap kali of the derivative ba constant ida, niya resultado will always be a 0. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, derivative of a constant times a function. Okay, so if you have a derivative of a constant times a function ida, derivative of a function times a constant. For example, yeah, a function ida na f of x. Tapos depois iya f of x na mas iya a constante ida multiplica ba una function ida na. Okay, nebe pahiro at 40 imininya derivative by the ne, derivative with respect to dx of a constant a multiplica by imininya f of x. Yeah, imininya f of x, imininya y ga, which is equal to a dot y. Sana sanet ya. Is simply equal to, imi 40 out, 40 side tiya, a ne may oing, may tiya oing constant, imi 40 side tiya, imi hakerek fila validate, my derivative of with respect to dx, and just simply take the y, the function. Okay, or you just, yeah, imi a function ne, or just, I'll write function para be, ito label confusam ya. Function ne, bahin ito kule kona function ne, kata, bahin ito kule f of x, sana sana, artinya ito niya buat ne, iya x square, ito ni input ne ma x, ya. Bahira kule f of x ne kata ito ni equation ni x square plus x cube minus 1 over x. Artinya ito ni independent variable ni x ya kotok. That's what we mean by functions. F of x. Comprende to? Ini aprende na function. Jadi ini comprende what this means. This is another properties. This is another formula. So when you have a derivative of a function of a constant times a function, anto ini performance ni usa formula name. Now the second one, the third one is derivative of power function. Derivative of power function. Okay. Ida nema ka ora mabulu narang the power rule. Okay, power rule ni sira. If n is positive, I will tell you what n is in a minute. Positive integer. Then derivative of dx by here ini function ni maka x pangkat n ida. Berarti we bring that n down ini x ini n thank you minus value 1. That's what the power rule means. Okay. How say for hotu ti rule sir ni hotu mi ito uja halo example dali da ya. Okay, ida falita nomor 4. Derivative of sums and differences. And differences. Ida ni diha. By here, or how you function rua, I have two functions, function A or function B, function F or function J. Sernaruma additional malo. So if I have derivative of two functions, function A plus or minus a function G, then the pertama o thank you for tulog derivative ida ba function ida primero nilai, ida pertama ulo. Derivative of the first function, pues plus ka minus derivative of the second function. Makanera to na. Okay, or ida nemos ita bela kerek fila sane derivative of ita bela kerek falihan sane f of x plus or minus g of x katak bahiri minya function ni herua mabe function rua ni ma soma ba malu be ini miha kerek fila fali derivative of dx, that will just simply be f of x okay, derivative of the first function pertama ni plus derivative of the second function kedua ni. Simple, not very hard, huh? But here it's plus or minus, yeah. Bele plus, bele minus, then the symbol doesn't actually matter. Agora, ida fali product, ida fali é mavolunaran derivative of a product. Derivative of a product. Okay, so this simply means that you have, that's what you call a product rule, yeah? O ini product rule. Okay? Product rule. For example, if you have two functions, bahira ini a function rule, maka multiplica ba malu. So for example, if you have derivative of two functions, multiplica ba malu. Okay, heleta ne addition and subtraction. Yung okos ne multiplica ba malu. Berarti primeiro o tem que hakerek uluk la derivative ida function primeiro ne o hakerek fila validate lali ka halu betida. E depois you take derivative of the second function uluk. E depois maka o plus fila vali. Hakerek fila vali ulang on a function de segundo and then you multiply by derivative of the first function. With respect to dx. Okay, I forgot to write this with the red circle over here. Okay, that's what you call a product derivative of, or product rule. Yata in the fali mabulunaran derivative of quotient. Okay. So for example, ini niya be derivative ne ini iha quotient entre two functions. For example, derivative of f of x divided by some g of x. Okay, ne bahira be function Roma imi divide ba malu. Depois may miakar poti niya derivative. Berarti imi tinggal hakerek date. Primeiro imi tem que hakerek uluk maka function ni de okos g of x ne hakerek repete filfali. Imi foti derivative function ni de heletene d of f of x with respect to dx. Depois imi minus filafali. Imi hakerek filafali imi function ni de f of x ne imi hakerek filafali. Depois imi foti imi derivative of g of x with respect to dx. E depois imi divide everything by imi denominator g of x ne square. Okay, so this is another formula. Okay, or see the formula ni mi bele lori tama ba ya aula lan. You don't have to memorize this, so don't worry about memorizing this. Okay. Okay, ida fali tama bolu nara derivative of a composition. Derivative of a composition. Of composition. Or ema bolu naran chain rule. Okay, so for example, ano sana ya? For example, iminya function nene composite function instead of iminya function ne be sayda. Okay, so for example, iminya be iminya function ne maka sayda iminya function ne if you have iminya function y is equal to f the function of g of x. Okay, idanekan iminya be composite function tu imi aprende na. And then imi hatene katak u ne sama dengan g of x. Nabi at for the derivative by y dy over dx, all you simply do is take the derivative of y with respect to the u with respect to the gx, multiply by derivative of u divided that by derivative of x. Okay, that's how you do it. I'll give you an example later on how you use this stuff, okay? But for now, let's just write out all the formulas for derivative. Don't worry, we have just 3 more, then we finish with the properties. It was 3 more formulas. You have A, that will be derivative of power. Of a power. What is that? So basically, if you have a derivative of something, of a function u, for example, if your derivative of a function u that is raised to n, so all you need to bring down the n, multiply by u n minus 1, and then you have to multiply du over dx again. Okay. Now number 9, derivative of radical. Of radicals with index equals to 2. Index equal to 2. Okay. So if you have derivative with respect to dx, and then if you have derivative of that square root, berarti imi-40 ulog maka, let's call this a u function. Du over dx, imi divide tia fali by 2, multiplica fila fakere fila fali ulan dit. E denominator na sana. Dua ne tambah di hene, 2 hene. That's why you have a 2 over here. Don't get confused, yeah. Nabi bapak iya beneni telah kerek 2 dah. Kita kerek atas sana. radikalnya babain dua, bahin tiga paleta minta kere, radikalnya tak kere. Saya dua itu lah kira-kira. That's the one properties. The last properties that I'm going to show you is derivative of radical with index other than 2. Ya, sekarang ini laos 2 kan sam? Of index other than 2. Or derivative of radicals with index other than 2. Okay, nesara. Berarti if you have a derivative with respect to dx, u pangkat 1 over n, which simply you write 1 over n ya right, multiply by only u dan 1 over n minus 1, you multiply by du over dx. All right, let's do some example. Okay, let's do some sample problems. All right, so or let me just copy some of this. I don't know, maybe I can Google it and then put it here. Makes my life much easier. Let's see. Derivative properties, derivative formulas. Maybe so makes my life easier. I don't have to write it. Yeah, here you go. You have a trigonometric function, logarithmic function. No, this is all these function, not the. You have power rule, basic rules of differentiation. Yes, you have a bunch of them over here. The basic rules of differentiation. Okay. I just want a picture of it. Not very complicated. Why do you have to make this? Okay, there you go. But oh yeah, character ni summary naman eh. I want to copy this so that I can later on I don't have to scroll back and forth. Bababa my But anyway. Okay, let's see. Imi sa accompany na class to? Mas kala? Utot sa nila to? Okay, baru lakot kan. Everybody still here, right? All right, so let's do sample problem number 1. So for example, if I have a function y is equal to x squared minus 5. Okay, and I want to know the derivative of y with respect to x. Okay, so this is how you read it. You read this as read as derivative of y with respect to x. As a translation by English normal naman the change of y with respect to the change of x. That's what it means. Okay, that's the normal English. But in mathematics, we call the change of y in derivative. So, to find the derivative of dy over dx, now, yan ito ni function ni x squared minus 5. So, sige lang. Ida pertama niya ito ni x squared. Antang ita aplika ito niya power rule. Ito na. Panghira o ni x ni mapangkat ba n rumah, berarti o bring down o ni x ni may 2x. Ida n ni o muda fali may oin date. O ni n ni 2. Lo salay. O muda fali 2 ni may oin 2x. Bes elete ni o ni 2 kurang 1. Tama ni n minus 1. So sila ni pertama. Termo pertama ni o ya x. Mabe termo kedua ni o ya x kalay. Ha?
No.
No, this is just a constant, right? So since this is a constant, derivative of a constant is simply what? 0. That's that. So that means it's simply 2x. So derivative of that function is simply 2x. O hinta halo dane usa compara fali o hinta usa limit the differentiation ni heta 2x to kala. For example, ito usa fali of this function over here. X squared minus 4x plus 5. Ni heta 2x minus 4 kala. X squared plus minus 4x plus 5. X squared, oh wait, is that it? X squared minus 4x plus 5. X squared minus 4. Remember, ini resposta naman 2x minus 4. X squared minus 4x plus 5. X squared minus 4x plus 5. Okay? Y is equal to x squared minus 4x plus 5. And now, if I want to find the derivative of this, derivative of d over dx, that will be what? I bring down the 2 in the front and 2 minus 1. So that will just be 2x. Derivative of negative 4. Yan kan, yan 1 yan ito. Nebe sekali ka 40 na minus 4. Okay? Kali ba 1 ito ba here o lori 2 minus o kali ba 1 ito lori 2 minus? Okay, let me just write it right like this. So only 2 idane kan, only 2 idane. Let's make this this is a 2. So you bring down this 2 over here, multiply by there is 1 over here. X 2 minus 1. It's a minus 4 multiplied by the 1 that you bring in. But then x is 1 minus 1. Nasalah, base ba formula be sada power rule na ba ne? Ang mabe derivative ba be constant na sada 0 na. Basta? Now, idanay itahetan 2x, idanay itahetan 4 times 1, x pangkat idanay 0 to. 1 minus 1 is 0. Mahira, any number raised to 0 is what? Equals to?
1.
1. That's why you have just 1. So 4 times 1 is simply 4. And this is a 0. So this is what your answer is. It's the same thing as when we use the differentiation formula, right? 2x minus 4. Los kala. Resulta na lesan kala. Yes, 2x minus 4. But this one is much larger. Idanene niya be calculação narukliu. That's why we have the formulas to make it better. But we don't go, but the definition of derivative is the same. We don't change the definition. We just develop a formula to make our life easier. That's it. That's simply it. Okay. Now let's do another example over here. Let's do, if I have a y, a function that have 5x plus 3 multiplied by 6 minus 7x. Okay, and then kan, if we call this f of x, into colon and g of x, then kasi wani multiplica ba malo lo salay. Tama ito uza na be. Ito uja the product rule. Lo salay. Okay, so the derivative of dy with respect to x, berarti product rule ni dia sadap. Primeiro ita tem que hakerek uluk on f of x, ita pertama ne. Berarti ita hakerek ulang filafali 5x plus 3. And then you take the derivative of the second, derivative with respect to x of the second function, 6 minus 7x. And then the next is you plus, next may ita plus. Oh. Ita plus, ita rewrite fali the z of x ne, ita be 6 minus 7x ni tahakirik ulang filafali. Oh my God, what's wrong with my pen? I hate it when this happens. Okay, 6 minus 7x itahakirik filafali. Depois you take the derivative of that 5x plus 3 with respect to x. Then continua. The itahakirik filafali 5x plus 3. Derivative of 6 is what? Derivative of a function is 0. So you don't have to write it. Derivative of negative 7x is simply negative 7. Plus 6 minus 7x. Derivative of 5x is what? Nekan 5x. Derivative of idanekan talo siya. Yeah? Derivative of 5x. Ini mihalawin siya. Ini 1. Ini mura 1 ne minus 1 kali 5 x. 1 kurang 1 0. Ini heta maka 5 los date. So you only have 5. Derivative of 3 is 0. Derivative of a constant is 0. And then you multiply it inside. Negative 35x minus 21 plus 30 minus 35x. That's correct. So therefore, your dy over dx is simply negative 35 minus negative 35. That is negative 70x minus 21 plus 30. That is plus 9. So this is your derivative. Alright, ¿comprende to? ¿Preguntas? Okay, let's do one more example before we go. Okay, now ita halafali exemplo itatang. Okay, so number 4. Y is equal to x 2 over 3. Oh, no. Y is equal to 2x squared minus 3x plus 1 divided that by x. Agora ini tinha function ni rua. Function ni lete, function ni right. Let's call this let's call this f of x. Let's call at the bottom g of x. Nekan cenaro quotient on alo salah berarti itu uja, thank you uja. The quotient rule, this rule over here. Okay, this rule ne say diyan sada. Primeiro o hakerek fila fali ihe the numerator ne o hakerek fila fali de. So dy over dx, you just first ito x ne o hakerek fila fali. But you only take the first you take the derivative of the one at the numerator, which is simply 2x squared minus 3x plus 1. And then you do what? Then you minus, you rewrite your f of x, which is simply 2x squared minus 3x plus 1, and you take the derivative of the z of x, which is just simply x with respect to dx. Okay. Okay. So therefore, on a dy over dx is simply x multiplied by, what is the derivative of 2x squared? O bring 2x squared ne kan derivative o buray na may cry. So 2 kali 2 x 2 kurang 1. So you get 4x, just simply x, 4x. Left. Okay, so you simply have 4x. Derivative of negative 3x is simply negative 3x. Derivative of 1, a constant, is simply a 0, minus 2x squared minus 3x plus 1. Right? What is the derivative of just x? So derivative of just x with respect to, yan can have 1. So 1, bring down 1, x1 minus 1. This is 0. It's just simply a constant. Just simply 1. To the left? This is just simply 1. Okay, now that you know that, you get, you multiply. Yes.
Negative 3x yang
Ano sana?
negative 3 itu kan negative 3x.
Negative what?
Iya x-nya larang deh. 4x minus 3 kan 4x minus 3x.
Yes, you're right.
Tambah
Thank
itu
you.
ya. Kalau
4x minus 3.
ya,
Yes, thank you.
storing how to picture.
4x minus 3. Yes, you're right. Sorry na beta?
Itu storing how to.
4x minus 3, 2x. No, this one is, you don't derivative this. You just write it as it is based on the rule, based on the quotient rule.
Thank you.
Okay, so you multiply it inside, that becomes 4x squared minus 3x minus 2x squared plus 3x minus 1. Okay, so 4x minus a square, so you get 2x squared. Minus 3x plus 3x, you just cancel it out. That? And then you just have minus 1. So this is your dy over dx. Simply means, in a nutshell. All right, now we can continue more problems on next meeting. Next meeting will solve a bunch of problems that I think might be makes the concept more clear to you guys. So, yeah. By the way, you have any question before I make an absences? ¿Y preguntas, Roma?
Teacher, if it's possible, can you send the video for
What?
so I can the